3 hours before proposing to another woman, Korean Mafia boss Ryu Hyun-soo discovered that his black ex-wife was back in Seoul, raising the twin sons he never knew existed. Serena was no longer
Mom,
in another
are
country.
those strawberries for
She was
us?
here
Yes,
in
they
a
are.
yellow head wrap,
We'll have them
carrying
after school.
grocery bags, walking 2 boys to school in the same city where he had spent a decade building an empire and telling himself she had chosen to leave. The worst part was not the photograph. The worst part was that when he walked back through the glass doors of his own engagement party and looked across the room, the man who had handed him the divorce papers 10 years ago, the man who had told him Serena chose to leave, the man who was currently laughing with his future father-in-law and refilling his own champagne glass, looked up and met his eyes. And in that single look, Ryu Hyun-soo understood that the most dangerous man in the room had never been him. His chief of staff was named Baek Sung-jin. 61 years old, silver-haired, the kind of man who ironed his pocket square before funerals and remembered the birthday of every person who had ever been useful to him. He had served Hyun-soo's father before he served Hyun-soo. He had stood in this same penthouse the night the old man died, put his hand on a 19-year-old boy's shoulder and said, "You are the empire now." Hyun-soo had believed him, had trusted him with everything, with codes, with contracts, with the kind of quiet authority that does not appear on any organizational chart but moves the entire machine. He had trusted him with Serena. Hyun-soo set his champagne glass down on the nearest surface without looking at it. He crossed the room at the pace of a man who is not rushing, because he does not need to. 40 guests moved out of his path without being asked. That was the particular quality of his presence. Rooms rearranged themselves around him without instruction. He stopped beside Baek Sung-jin and leaned close enough that only the older man could hear. "Clear the room," he said, "all of it." Baek Sung-jin looked at him. His face did not move, but something behind his eyes did, something small and fast, the way a light flickers before a power cut. "Hungnim, the guests." I said all of it. The party was cleared in 11 minutes. Hyun-soo's future bride, Cho Ji-yeon, paused at the door with her coat half on and looked back at him. She was intelligent enough to read the room and composed enough not to ask questions in public. She left without a word. Her father, Chairman Cho, left less gracefully, his smile thinning at the edges. He was a man accustomed to being the most powerful person in any room he entered. He had never quite adjusted to the fact that in rooms containing Ryu Hyun-soo, that was never true. When the last guest was gone and the catering staff had been ushered out, the penthouse was very quiet. The city sat beyond the floor-to-ceiling glass, patient and indifferent, 42 floors below. Hyun-soo placed his phone on the dining table with the photograph facing up. Baek Sung-jin looked at it for a long moment. Then he clasped his hands behind his back and said nothing. "Where did this come from?" Hyun-soo said. "A routine security sweep. Itaewon District. My assistant filed it to the wrong folder. I received it by mistake." Baek Sung-jin's jaw moved slightly. Just slightly. "Those boys," Hyun-soo said. "Look at them." "Hungnim." I said, "Look at them." The older man looked. The silence that followed was the loudest thing Hyun-soo had heard in 10 years. "How long?" Hyun-soo said. A pause that lasted exactly 1 second too long. "I don't know what you mean." Hyun-soo pulled out the chair in front of him and sat down slowly, deliberately, the way he sat in rooms where he intended to stay until he had everything he came for. "You told me she chose to leave," he said. "You sat across from me in my father's study and told me Serena signed the papers willingly, packed her things and went home to the United States. You told me she did not want to be contacted, that she had asked specifically that I respect her decision." Baek Sung-jin said nothing. "She is back in Seoul," Hyun-soo said, "with my sons. Sons I never knew existed." The word sons landed in the room like something physical. Baek Sung-jin exhaled slowly through his nose. When he spoke, his voice was the voice of a man who had decided, in real time, how much of the truth was survivable. "Your father made a decision. I carried it out. That is all I will say tonight." Hyun-soo nodded once, the small, precise nod of a man filing information in a place where it will not be forgotten. "Go home," he said. "Do not speak to anyone tonight. Do not make any calls. Do not move any files. Tomorrow morning you will come to my office at 8 and tell me everything. Every name, every instruction, every transfer, every person involved. If I discover you spent tonight moving pieces, I will not be the reasonable man I am being right now. Baek Sung. Jin bowed, the bow of a man who understood the precise nature of the mercy he had just been extended. He left. Hyun-soo sat alone in the empty penthouse. The catering staff had left food on the long table, champagne still in glasses, a centerpiece of white peonies that Ji-yeon's mother had personally selected. He looked at the photograph again. The boys were identical in height, walking slightly ahead of Serena, the way boys that age walk when they are trying to appear independent while staying close enough to be safe. One had his hands in his pockets. The other was saying something that had made Serena turn her head and almost smile. Almost. That almost was what broke something open in his chest. He remembered that expression. The way she held a smile back when something caught her off guard, the way she would look sideways at him in the middle of a serious conversation, and he would know she was fighting it. He had not thought about that expression in years. He had not allowed himself to. He walked to his private study and opened the archive he had not touched since his father's death. It took 40 minutes to find what he was looking for. A sealed file folder behind a false panel that his father's personal attorney had told him contained only old property deeds. It did not contain property deeds. It contained a bank transfer receipt. 300 million won. Dated 10 years ago, 2 weeks before Serena disappeared. Recipient, a private relocation firm registered in Busan. Service description, one word, resolved. It contained a surveillance photograph of Serena leaving what appeared to be a hospital, one hand on the doorframe, one hand on her stomach, her face doing something Hyun-soo could not look at directly. And it contained a letter in his father's handwriting. 4 sentences. The foreign woman carries a complication the family cannot absorb. She has been handled with discretion. She will not return. This matter is closed as of today and will not be discussed again by anyone in this house. Hyun-soo read it 3 times. Then he folded it exactly along its original crease and placed it back in the envelope. His father had been dead for 2 years. There was nothing to be done with anger that belonged to a dead man. So he set it aside with the discipline of someone who had learned that unfocused rage is the most expensive thing a powerful man can afford. He searched for 10 minutes through channels his organization used for locating persons of interest. Serena Nwosu, back in Seoul, currently of the Itaewon district. The search returned an address in 4 minutes. A small apartment building on a residential street. 2 registered occupants listed as minors under her household. A lease signed 8 months ago. She had come back, and she had built something real and quiet and entirely without his name attached to any part of it. He did not go to the address that night. Arriving unannounced at the home of a woman who had been forcibly removed from everything she knew, who had spent a decade rebuilding herself without him, would be the kind of move that closed doors permanently. He had spent 10 years being the man who acted first and considered consequences later. He understood now, sitting in his empty penthouse with his engagement party's leftovers going cold on the table, that version of himself was precisely the reason he was sitting here alone. He would not go tonight, but he would find a way to reach her. And when he did, he would let her set every single term. He owed her at least that. It took 9 days and 4 ignored messages before Serena responded. The first 3 he sent through a neutral intermediary, simply asking for 15 minutes at a time and place of Serena's choosing. The intermediary reported back each time with the same single word. Declined. The 4th message he sent himself from his personal number with no introduction and no appeal to their history. I found the file my father kept. I know what was done. I am not asking you to forgive anything. I am asking for the chance to say that to your face because you deserve to hear it from me directly and not through anyone else. Whatever you decide after that, I will respect completely. Serena did not reply for 2 days. Then she sent 4 words. Tuesday, 11 a.m., laundromat. She included an address and nothing else. He arrived 5 minutes early. She was already there, loading a machine. She did not look up when he walked in. She let him stand there for a full minute before she turned around, leaned against the machine with her arms crossed, and looked at him the way a person looks at a structural problem they have already calculated and are simply waiting to confirm. She was exactly as he remembered and entirely different. 10 years had settled into her the way they settle into people who have carried real weight. There was nothing soft about her stillness. It was the stillness of someone who had decided long ago that she would not be moved by things that had not earned the right to move her. You have until this cycle finishes, she said. 18 minutes. She pulled a folded piece of paper from her jacket pocket and held it out. He took it. It was written on the back of a school schedule. She had chosen the most ordinary piece of paper in her life to set the terms of the most extraordinary conversation. He read it. 1. No contact with the boys until I say so. Not a look held too long. Not an accidental meeting. Nothing. 2. Any investigation you are running, I want full written records. Not summaries. Everything. 3. The engagement is withdrawn this week. I do not need to know how. That is your problem to solve. 4. No protection detail on my building. No one watching my street. If I find a single person stationed near my home, I will take the boys, and you will not find us. I have had 10 years to learn how. He looked up from the paper. Rule 4, he said. There are people connected to my organization who may consider you and the boys a liability now that I am asking questions. I cannot in good conscience leave you unprotected while... She tilted her head. Are you negotiating my rules? He closed his mouth. No, he said, I am not. Then sign it at the bottom. There is a pen in my jacket pocket on the chair. He signed it. She folded it and put it in her pocket without looking at it again. There is one more thing, she said, her back still to him. He waited. I knew about Baek Sung Jin 3 years ago, she said. I found the transfer record through a source I will not name. I said nothing and did nothing because I needed to know if you were the kind of man who would find it yourself. She paused. That was the only test that mattered to me, not whether you were sorry, whether you were paying attention. The washing machine moved into its cycle. He wanted to ask how she had survived it, how she had raised 2 boys alone in a foreign country with no safety net and still became the kind of woman who walked into a laundromat and set terms with the quiet authority of someone who had never once lost the thread of who she was. He did not ask. It was not his question to ask yet. She picked up her laundry basket. I will be in touch about the written updates, she said. Do not contact me for any other reason. She walked out. The machine kept going. Hyun-soo stood alone in the laundromat, holding the pen he had used to sign the paper, and understood for the first time in 10 years that he was not in charge of a single thing that mattered. The engagement withdrawal took Hyun-soo 48 hours to handle and cost him something more expensive than money. He called Chairman Cho directly. No intermediary, no lawyer, no carefully worded letter from a PR firm. He called the man himself on a Tuesday evening and said simply that the engagement would not proceed, that the decision was final, and that he was prepared to discuss any business implications at a time of the chairman's choosing, but that the personal matter was closed. Chairman Cho was quiet for a long moment. You are making a serious mistake, he said. I have made several, Hyun-soo said. I am trying to make fewer of them going forward. The call ended. What happened next was the kind of thing that happens when powerful men feel publicly diminished. Chairman Cho did not call a press conference. He did not issue a statement. He made a quieter and more dangerous move. He called a journalist he had used before, a man who specialized in stories that never needed to be proven to be damaging, and gave him 2 things: a description of Serena and the name of the district where she lived. The journalist began making inquiries within 24 hours. Cho Ji-yeon found out about her father's move the same evening he made it. She had grown up watching him operate and had learned early to keep her own sources inside his organization. She sat with the information for exactly 1 hour. Then she did something her father would not have predicted, because he had spent 31 years fundamentally misreading the kind of woman his daughter had become. She drove herself to Itaewon. She found Serena the way anyone could find a woman who kept a visible routine. Tuesday laundromat. She walked in at 10:45, sat down on the bench across from the machines, and waited. Serena came in at 11, saw her, and stopped walking for exactly 1 second. Then she continued to the machine, loaded it, set the cycle, and turned around. You have until this cycle finishes, she said. Ji-yeon almost smiled. 18 minutes. Serena looked at her evenly. You know about the laundromat rule. I know everything my father's investigator filed in the last 24 hours, Ji-yeon said. That is why I am here. She placed a thin folder on the bench beside her and slid it across. Your name, your address, your boys' school, their schedule. He gave this to a journalist this morning. The story will run within the week, unless something stops it. Serena did not reach for the folder immediately. She looked at Ji-yeon steadily, without the performance of reaction. Why are you telling me this? She said. Because my father is using your children as leverage to punish a man who embarrassed him, and I will not be the reason two boys get their lives turned into a news cycle. Ji-yeon paused. Also because I read the real file. What was done to you 10 years ago? She stopped. I have a mother. She also had a suitcase once, and not enough people on her side. That is all I will say about that. The machine hummed between them. Serena picked up the folder. Her face did not change, but her jaw tightened once, briefly, when she reached the page with her son's school photographs. What are you going to do? Serena said. Ji-yeon folded her hands in her lap. I am going to have a conversation with my father tonight that he will find very uncomfortable. I have been his chief strategy officer for 4 years. I have signed off on things I should not have signed off on because I believed in the larger architecture of what we were building. She paused. I have kept very good records. He will not touch your boys, Ji-yeon said. Not a story, not a scholarship offer, not a single phone call to their school. I will make sure of it. But I needed you to know it was coming so that if I am wrong, you have time to move. Serena was quiet for a moment. Then she said, You are not what I expected. Ji-yeon stood and picked up her bag. No one ever is, she said. Tell Hyun-soo the engagement is officially withdrawn on my end as well. I will inform my father in my own time and my own way. He is not to contact me. She moved toward the door and then stopped with her hand on the frame. And tell him something else from me. Tell him that the only version of this story that ends well is the one where he stops running an empire and starts raising his sons. Everything else is noise. She left. Serena stood alone for a moment with the folder in her hands. Then she took out her phone and called Hyun-soo for the first time. He picked up on the second ring. Ji-yeon was just here, she said. She told me about her father's journalist. She is handling it. He is not to contact her. A pause. Is she all right? She is more than all right, Serena said. She is the most prepared woman I have met in a long time. She paused. The engagement withdrawal. Make sure it is clean. Make sure her name is handled with respect in whatever your organization says publicly. She did not deserve any of this. Understood, he said. Are you and the boys safe tonight? We are always safe, she said. That is not a new condition. She hung up. That night, Ji-yeon walked into her father's private study with a folder of her own. She set it on his desk without a word. He opened it, read the first 2 pages, and went very still. You would use this against your own family, he said. I would protect this family from itself, she said. If that story runs, if those boys are named in any publication, if a single person knocks on Serena's door because of information you provided, this folder goes to 3 separate places simultaneously. A lawyer in Singapore, a journalist I trust more than yours, and the National Tax Service. She looked at him without blinking. I love you, Appa, but I will not let you do this. Not to children, not in my name. Chairman Cho closed the folder. He did not speak for a long time. Then he said, The journalist will be pulled back by morning. Ji-yeon nodded. She picked up the folder and walked out. She did not cry until she reached her car. Then she sat in the parking structure for 10 minutes and allowed herself that much before she drove home. Hyun-soo received a single text from Ji-yeon's number the next morning. Handled. Do not thank me. Focus on your family. That is all I will ever ask of you. He forwarded it to Serena with 1 line attached. She asked me not to thank her. I am asking you to know what she did for your boys. She did not have to. She chose to. Serena read it in her kitchen while the boys were getting ready for school. She set the phone down and looked out the window for a long moment. Then she typed back 2 words. I know. She did not tell the boys that night. She waited 3 more days, until a Saturday morning when the apartment was quiet and the twins were eating breakfast and the light was coming through the kitchen window the way it did on good mornings, sideways and unhurried. She sat down across from them and said, I need to tell you both something, and I need you to listen to all of it before you say anything. The boys put down their chopsticks. She told them everything, not a softened version, not a version edited for their comfort. She told them about their father, who he was, what he did, what his family had done 10 years ago, why she had left, and why she had come back to Seoul. She told them she had not told them sooner because she had needed to be sure, and she told them she was sure now. The kitchen was very quiet when she finished. Ethan, the younger twin, spoke first the way he always did, before he had finished thinking, and somehow always landed close to the truth. Does he know about us? He said. He knows now, Serena said. He did not know before. What was done by his father and the people around him, not by him. Ethan considered this. But he is a Mafia boss, he said. Serena looked at him steadily. Yes. Is that bad? It is complicated, she said. Most things worth understanding are. Then Ezra, the older twin, looked up from the table. He had been sitting with his hands flat on the surface, looking at a fixed point between his bowl and the edge of the table, processing the way he always processed, inward and thorough and slow. He looked at his mother for a long moment. Then he stood up from his chair. I don't want to meet him, he said. The kitchen went completely silent. Serena did not flinch. She did not rush to fill the silence with reassurance. She simply looked at her older son and waited. Ethan looked at his brother, then at his mother, then back at his brother. Ezra's voice was steady, but there was something tight underneath it, the particular tightness of a boy who has spent years being the man of a household and has just been told that position was never supposed to be his. He left, Ezra said. He left, and you raised us alone and worked 14-hour shifts, and we moved 3 times, and you never once complained. And now, because he found a photograph, he wants to walk into our lives, and I am supposed to what? Be grateful. Serena said nothing for a moment. Then she said, No, you are not supposed to be anything. That is not how this works. Ezra looked at her. I am not asking you to forgive him, she said. I am not asking you to welcome him. I am telling you the truth because you are old enough for it, and because I promised you both the day you were born that I would never lie to you. What you do with that truth is yours to decide, not mine, not his. Ezra sat back down. He did not say anything else, but the tightness in his jaw did not leave. Ethan reached across the table and quietly took a piece of egg from his brother's bowl. Ezra did not stop him. They sat like that for a long moment, side by side, the way they had always faced things. What happens now? Ethan said. Now we finish breakfast, Serena said, and we take the time we need. Nobody is rushing anything. They finished breakfast. Hyun-soo sent his weekly update that afternoon, as he always did. 1 paragraph, investigation progress, no emotion, no appeal. Serena replied with her usual single word, received. She did not tell him what Ezra had said. That was not his information to carry yet. The days that followed were quiet in the apartment, but not easy. Ezra did his homework, went to school, came home, ate dinner. He was not cold to his mother. He was not dramatic. He simply went about his life with the focused self-containment of someone who had made a private decision and was not ready to revisit it. Ethan watched his brother the way he always watched people, sideways and patient, waiting. On the 4th evening, Ethan found Ezra sitting at the kitchen table after dinner, not doing anything, just sitting with his hands around a cup of barley tea that had gone cold. Ethan sat down across from him. You are still thinking about it, Ethan said. I am always thinking about it, Ezra said. Ethan was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Do you remember when we were 7? And you broke Umma's phone because you dropped it, and you were so scared to tell her that you hid it for 2 days. Ezra looked at him. What does that have to do with anything? You hid it because you were scared she would be disappointed in you, Ethan said. But she wasn't. She was just sad that you didn't trust her enough to tell her. He paused. I think maybe you are not actually angry at him. I think you are scared. Ezra did not answer immediately. Scared of what? He said finally. That you will let him in, Ethan said, and then he will leave again, and this time you will remember it. The kitchen was very still. Ezra picked up his cold tea. He did not drink it. He just held it. That is not a reason not to try, Ethan said. That is just a reason to be careful. And we can be careful. We are good at careful. Ezra set the cup down. He didn't say anything that night, but the next morning at breakfast he looked at his mother and said, I want to see the investigation file, the one he has been sending you. Serena looked at him for a moment. Then she got up, retrieved her phone, and placed it on the table in front of him. He read every update from the beginning. It took him 20 minutes. He read without expression, the way he read everything, thoroughly and without performance. When he finished, he handed the phone back. He didn't have to do any of this, Ezra said. The investigation. He could have just shown up and expected us to accept it. No, Serena said. He could not have, not with me. Ezra nodded slowly, a long pause. I am not ready to call him anything, he said. Not yet. But I will meet him. Serena nodded once. That is enough. The first meeting was a Sunday afternoon in a park in Taiwan, public and open, chosen entirely by Serena. She told Hyun-soo to come alone, to leave the coat that cost more than most cars at home, and to bring nothing. He arrived in a plain dark jacket with his hands in his pockets. Ethan saw him first and grabbed Ezra's sleeve. Ezra looked up and went very still, in the way that he had gone still at the kitchen table, inward and thorough. Hyun-soo stopped a few feet away. He looked at his sons the way a man looks at something he does not trust himself to name yet, because naming it makes it real, and real things can be lost. He bowed, not a shallow bow, a full, low, genuine bow to two 10-year-old boys in weekend clothes standing in a public park. Ethan bowed back immediately and said, "Ajossi, can you actually fight, or is that just what people say about you?" Serena briefly closed her eyes. Hyun-soo looked at the younger boy. "That is a question I will answer when you are older." Ethan seemed to find this acceptable. Ezra had not bowed yet. Hyun-soo did not prompt him. He did not look at Serena for help. He simply waited, standing in the afternoon light, giving the boy whatever time he needed. Ezra looked at him for a long moment, measuring, reading, doing the same slow, thorough calculation he applied to everything. Then he bowed. 15 degrees. Not warm, not cold. A door left slightly open rather than held shut. Hyun-soo bowed back, lower, 30 degrees without hesitation. They walked. The conversation across the next 2 hours was not dramatic. It was careful and ordinary and real. Ezra asked 3 questions he had clearly prepared in advance, direct and unembellished. Hyun-soo answered each one without deflecting. When he did not have an answer, he said so. When the answer reflected badly on himself, he gave it anyway. Ethan talked about soccer for 20 minutes with complete disregard for whether anyone was following his argument. At the end of the afternoon, Ezra stopped and looked at Hyun-soo. "You can come to my debate competition," he said. "It is next Saturday. You have to sit in the back. I do not want it to be about you." Hyun-soo nodded. "I will sit in the back." Ezra nodded once, then he walked ahead with his brother. Serena looked at Hyun-soo briefly. Something in her face had shifted, a fraction, the way a door that has been sealed for a long time shifts when the pressure on both sides finally equalizes. She said nothing. She followed her boys. He stood in the park for a moment longer. The city moved around him the way it always had, indifferent and vast. He had stood in this city for 10 years and called it his, had put his name on buildings and his signature on agreements that moved markets. None of it had felt like this. None of it had felt like a 10-year-old boy deciding, on his own terms, to leave a door open. He went home, and for the first time in as long as he could remember, the penthouse did not feel cold. It felt like what it was, a place he happened to sleep, not yet a life. But something had shifted, and he understood that the only way to keep it shifting in the right direction was to deserve it quietly. One Saturday, one back row seat, one honest answer at a time. 4 months later, on the morning of the twins' 10th birthday, Serena called him. "Come for dinner," she said. "Small. Just us and 2 people I trust. Sit at the head of the table, not as a guest, not as an old friend, as their father. That is what tonight is." He said, "I will be there." He arrived with a single bag of fruit, the way a guest should, because that is what she had taught him, that showing up correctly was worth more than showing up expensively. The apartment was warm. Mrs. O from downstairs was there, the woman who had watched the boys through every long shift Serena had ever worked. Serena's sister had flown in from Atlanta and looked at Hyun-soo for a long, careful moment before she stepped aside to let him in. The cake was small. The candles were 10. The boys blew them out together the way they had every year before. Except this year, there was one more person at the table. Ethan made the first toast because Ethan always spoke before he had finished thinking and somehow always landed correctly. To Uma he said, "Who did everything?" And to Appa, he said the word without rehearsal, without drama, the way children say true things when they have simply decided they are true. To Appa, who came back. Ezra raised his cup second. He looked at Hyun-soo directly, the way he had looked at him in the park, clear and unperformed. There was nothing rushed in it and nothing withheld. It was the look of a boy who had made a careful private decision and was now, on his own terms, making it visible. To Appa, he said, "Who is learning? Not who tried, not who showed up. Who is learning?" Present tense, ongoing. A door left open rather than a verdict delivered. Hyun-soo raised his cup. His hands were steady. He had learned across 4 months of back row seats and written investigation updates and 18-minute laundromat rules how to hold things carefully. He did not make a speech. He simply raised his cup and looked at his sons, and then at the woman who had raised them into people worth knowing, and he said, "Thank you for this seat." That was all. It was enough. And that is the difference between a man and a boy with a title. A boy makes everything about the moment he arrives. A man understands that arriving is just the beginning and that the real work is every ordinary Tuesday after that. If this story stayed with you, if you have ever believed that some things have to be rebuilt slowly and that slow is not the same as lost, then stay with us. Hit subscribe, hit the bell, and tell me in the comments when Ezra said to Appa, who is learning, did that land for you the way it landed for me? I am reading every single one tonight. Stay soft, stay present, and remember, the most powerful thing a person can do is decide, on their own terms, in their own time, to let someone earn their way back to the table.